The ranger found a dying lion in the wilderness. What he did next shocked the whole town. The sun beat down mercilessly on the parched landscape of the California wilderness. Dust devils danced across the dry riverbed, and the air shimmered with heat. It was the kind of day that sent most sensible creatures seeking the shade. But not John Riley. John, a weathered man in his late 50s, with a shock of gray hair and eyes that mirrored the blue of the desert sky, was out on his usual morning hike. John had always been a solitary man, finding solace in the vastness of the wilderness. He'd spent most of his life in this small, forgotten corner of California, working as a park ranger, more comfortable with the company of coyotes and rattlesnakes than with his fellow humans. His wife, Mary, had passed away a few years back, and his 2 grown children had long since flown the coop, leaving John to his quiet, predictable routine. But this morning something was different. As he rounded a bend in the trail, a sound pierced the stillness of the desert air, a low, guttural roar, filled with pain and desperation. It wasn't the familiar growl of a mountain lion or the howl of a coyote. This was something else, something deeper, something leonine. John froze, his senses on high alert. He'd been a ranger for over 30 years, and he knew every sound the desert had to offer. But a lion? Here in the Californian wilderness? Impossible. Yet, the roar echoed again, undeniable, agonizing. Curiosity, that age-old human flaw, got the better of him. Ignoring the voice of caution whispering in his ear, John cautiously moved towards the sound, his hand instinctively reaching for the hunting knife he always carried on his belt. The terrain grew rougher, the trail disappearing into a maze of rocks and scrub. The roar came again, closer this time, guiding him forward. Finally, he reached a small, hidden canyon, its entrance shrouded by thick bushes. The roar emanated from within. With his heart pounding in his chest, John parted the foliage and peered inside. And there it was, a lion, a magnificent male lion, with a tawny mane that framed its noble head, lay sprawled on the dusty ground. His eyes, usually burning with a fierce intensity, were clouded with pain, and its breathing was shallow and labored. A deep gash ran along its flank, matted with dried blood. John's mind reeled. How on earth had a lion ended up here, hundreds of miles from the nearest zoo or wildlife sanctuary? It was a mystery, but one that could wait. The immediate concern was the animal's condition. It was clearly in distress, perhaps even dying. Something stirred within John, a deep-seated compassion he hadn't felt in years. He couldn't just leave this creature to suffer. He had to help. But how? He was a park ranger, not a veterinarian. He had basic first aid knowledge, but this was a lion, a wild predator. One wrong move could cost him his life. Yet, as he looked into the lion's pain-filled eyes, a strange sense of calm washed over him. Fear gave way to determination. He had to try. Taking a deep breath, John stepped into the canyon, his every sense alert. He approached the lion slowly, speaking in a low, soothing voice. "Easy there, big fella. I'm not going to hurt you." The lion watched him with wary eyes, its massive head barely lifting from the ground. John knelt a few feet away, keeping a safe distance but close enough to assess the injury. The gash was deep, but it didn't seem to be infected. With gentle hands, he cleaned the wound as best he could, using water from his canteen and a clean cloth from his backpack. The lion remained surprisingly docile, as if sensing John's good intentions. It even allowed him to touch its mane, a gesture of trust that both surprised and moved the old ranger. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the canyon, John knew he couldn't stay there indefinitely. He needed to get help, but he couldn't leave the lion alone. With a heavy heart, he made a decision. He would stay with the lion through the night, keeping watch and ensuring it didn't suffer. Tomorrow, he would return to town and alert the authorities. Until then, he was all this magnificent creature had. Little did John know that this unexpected encounter was just the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would challenge his beliefs, test his courage, and ultimately change his life forever. The desert night descended, draping the canyon in an inky blackness punctuated by the brilliance of a million stars. The air, which had shimmered with heat just hours before, now held a biting chill. John huddled beside the injured lion, his thin jacket offering little protection against the cold. He had managed to gather some dry wood and build a small fire, its flickering flames casting dancing shadows on the canyon walls. The lion, which he had tentatively named Leo, seemed to appreciate the warmth, shifting closer to the fire with a low rumble of contentment. John kept vigil, his eyes constantly scanning the darkness for any signs of danger. He knew that other predators, drawn by the scent of blood, might be lurking nearby, but his main concern was Leo. The lion's breathing was still labored, and its occasional whimpers tugged at John's heartstrings. As the hours crept by, John found himself reflecting on his life. He had always been a loner, content with his own company and the familiar rhythms of the wilderness. But the unexpected arrival of Leo had disrupted his solitude, awakening something deep within him, a sense of purpose, perhaps, or a longing for connection. He thought of Mary, his beloved wife, who had always had a soft spot for animals. She would have adored Leo, he mused, picturing her gentle touch on the lion's majestic mane. A wave of sadness washed over him, a reminder of his loss and the emptiness that had filled his life since her passing. But Leo's presence was a balm to his loneliness. There was something profoundly moving about caring for this magnificent creature, about being entrusted with its life. It was a responsibility he didn't take lightly. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky with hues of pink and orange, John knew he had to make a decision. He couldn't stay in the canyon forever. He needed to get help for Leo, and that meant leaving him alone. With a pang of reluctance, he rose to his feet, his joints stiff from the cold night. He placed a hand on Leo's head, feeling the warmth of its fur beneath his palm. "I'll be back, Leo," he whispered. "I promise." The lion looked up at him with its amber eyes, a flicker of understanding in their depths. John wasn't sure if it was his imagination, but he could have sworn he saw a hint of gratitude in those eyes. With a heavy heart, he turned and left the canyon, the image of the injured lion etched in his mind. He had a long trek ahead of him, back to his truck and then into town. But he knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't rest until he had secured help for Leo. The journey back was arduous, the sun beating down with renewed intensity. But John was driven by a newfound sense of urgency. He reached his truck by midday and sped towards the nearest town, his mind racing with thoughts of how to explain his incredible discovery. He knew he would be met with skepticism, perhaps even ridicule. A lion in the Californian wilderness? It sounded preposterous, but John had never been one to shy away from a challenge. He would convince them somehow. Leo's life depended on it. The small town of Harmony Creek was a sleepy place, a cluster of weathered buildings huddled around a dusty main street. Life moved at a slower pace here, dictated by the rhythms of the surrounding ranches and the occasional tourist passing through on their way to the national park. John, with his ranger uniform and his weathered face, was a familiar figure in Harmony Creek, a man of few words and even fewer needs. But today, John was a man on a mission. He burst into the sheriff's office, his usual calm demeanor replaced by an anxious urgency. Sheriff Thompson, a portly man with a handlebar mustache and a perpetually bemused expression, looked up in surprise. "John, what's all the commotion?" he drawled, leaning back in his creaky chair. "Sheriff, you won't believe this," John gasped, trying to catch his breath. "There's a lion in the canyon north of Miller's Creek. It's injured, needs help." Sheriff Thompson's eyebrows shot up, his mustache twitching in amusement. "A lion, John? Now, are you sure you haven't been into Old Man Hemming's moonshine again?" John's frustration mounted. "I'm serious, Sheriff. It's a real lion. I saw it with my own eyes. It's hurt, maybe dying." The sheriff, seeing the genuine distress in John's eyes, finally sat up, his amusement fading. "All right, John, calm down. Tell me exactly what happened." John recounted his encounter with the lion, describing its injuries and its location in detail. The sheriff listened intently, his expression gradually shifting from skepticism to concern. "Well, I'll be," he muttered, stroking his mustache thoughtfully. "A lion. Never thought I'd see the day." He paused, considering his options. "Look, John, I'll call Dr. Evans. He's the vet over in Redwood Falls. Knows a thing or two about big animals. But I gotta tell ya, this sounds like a tall tale. You sure you weren't imagining things?" John's patience was wearing thin. "Sheriff, I've spent my whole life in these parts. I know what I saw. That lion needs help, and it needs it now." The sheriff, sensing John's determination, nodded. "All right, John, I'll make the call. But you better be right about this. A wild lion roaming around. It could cause a panic." Dr. Evans, a gruff but experienced veterinarian, arrived in Harmony Creek a few hours later, his skepticism evident in his narrowed eyes. He listened to John's story with a dubious frown, occasionally muttering about hallucinations and desert heat. But John's persistence, coupled with the sheriff's cautious backing, finally convinced Dr. Evans to accompany them to the canyon. Armed with tranquilizers and medical supplies, they set off in the sheriff's truck, John leading the way. As they approached the canyon, the tension in the vehicle was palpable. Dr. Evans grumbled about the inconvenience, while the sheriff nervously checked his rifle. John, however, felt a surge of hope. He was bringing help to Leo. They found the lion where John had left it, its condition seemingly unchanged. Dr. Evans, his initial skepticism replaced by professional concern, carefully approached the animal tranquilizer gun at the ready. The dart hit its mark, and within minutes, the lion was sedated. Dr. Evans examined the wound, his frown deepening. "It's a nasty gash," he admitted. "Looks like it was caused by some kind of sharp object, maybe a fence." He worked quickly, cleaning and stitching the wound, while John and the sheriff looked on with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The lion, even in its unconscious state, exuded an aura of power and majesty. "He'll need antibiotics and close monitoring," Dr. Evans declared, packing up his equipment. "But he should pull through." Relief washed over John. He had done it. He had saved Leo's life. But as they prepared to transport the lion to Dr. Evans' clinic, a new question arose. What would happen to Leo once he recovered? He couldn't be released back into the wild. Not here. He was a stranger in this land, a magnificent creature out of place. John knew he couldn't simply abandon Leo to an uncertain fate. He had saved his life once. He would do it again. He would find a way to give Leo a home, a place where he belonged. This was just the beginning of their story. News of the lion's discovery spread through Harmony Creek like wildfire. The quiet town, usually undisturbed by anything more dramatic than a stray cow or a summer thunderstorm, was abuzz with excitement and apprehension. The story, embellished with each retelling, grew into a legend of a fearsome beast roaming the hills, a threat to livestock and children. John, hailed as a local hero by some and branded a liar by others, found himself at the center of the storm. He was besieged with questions, doubts, and accusations. The local newspaper, the Harmony Creek Gazette, ran a front-page story with the headline, "Man-Eating Lion Terrorizes Local Canyon." The accompanying photo, a blurry snapshot John had taken of Leo with his phone, did little to quell the growing fear. Sheriff Thompson, caught between his duty to maintain order and his lingering disbelief, tried to calm the town's anxieties. He issued a statement assuring residents that the lion was under veterinary care and posed no immediate threat. But the seed of fear had been planted, and it was taking root. Meanwhile, John was preoccupied with Leo's well-being. He visited Dr. Evans' clinic daily, bringing fresh meat and keeping vigil by the lion's makeshift enclosure. Leo was recovering well, his wound healing steadily, but his spirit seemed subdued, his roars replaced by low, mournful growls. John knew the lion was yearning for the freedom of the wild, a freedom he could no longer offer. The question of Leo's future loomed large. Dr. Evans had contacted several zoos and wildlife sanctuaries, but none were willing to take in an adult male lion, especially one with an unknown history. "They're a dime a dozen, John," the vet explained, his voice laced with regret. "Most places are already at capacity." John refused to give up. He spent hours on the phone, contacting every animal organization he could find, pleading Leo's case. He even wrote letters to state officials, highlighting the unique circumstances of the lion's arrival and emphasizing the need for a humane solution. His efforts, however, were met with polite refusals and bureaucratic roadblocks. The reality was stark. There was no place for Leo in the world he had stumbled into. One evening, as John sat by Leo's enclosure, a voice startled him. "You seem mighty attached to that beast," a woman said, her tone laced with suspicion. John turned to see Mrs. Peterson, a stern-faced woman known for her sharp tongue and her pack of yapping chihuahuas. She was a prominent member of the town council and a vocal opponent of anything that disrupted Harmony Creek's tranquility. "He's not a beast, Mrs. Peterson," John replied calmly. "He's a lion, and he needs our help." Mrs. Peterson sniffed. "Humph, he's a danger to our community. A wild animal like that belongs in a cage, or better yet, put down." John's anger flared. "He's not dangerous. He's injured, scared. He didn't ask to be here." "Well, he's here now," Mrs. Peterson retorted. "And he's disrupting our way of life. We can't have a predator roaming around, scaring our children and killing our livestock." John knew he was fighting a losing battle. Fear and prejudice were powerful forces, especially in a small town like Harmony Creek. He needed to find a solution, and fast, before Leo became a victim of the town's anxieties. That night, as John lay awake, an idea began to take shape in his mind. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was Leo's only hope. He would create a sanctuary for Leo, right here in Harmony Creek. He would build a place where the lion could live in peace, a place where people could come to appreciate the beauty and majesty of this magnificent creature. It was a daunting task, fraught with challenges and uncertainties, but John was determined. He had found a purpose, a mission that went beyond his solitary existence. He would give Leo a home, even if it meant facing the wrath of Harmony Creek. John's idea for a lion sanctuary was met with a mixture of disbelief and derision in Harmony Creek. Mrs. Peterson, leading the charge of opposition, rallied the town council and circulated a petition demanding the removal of the dangerous predator. Fear-mongering whispers filled the local diner and the aisles of the general store. John, once a respected figure in the community, was now seen as an eccentric, a troublemaker, even a threat. But John was undeterred. He had a vision and he was determined to see it through. He began by seeking advice from experts. He contacted wildlife biologists, zoologists, and sanctuary owners, absorbing every piece of information he could gather about lion behavior, habitat requirements, and safety protocols. He pored over blueprints and regulations, learning about enclosure design, fencing standards, and permit procedures. His next step was to find a suitable location. He needed a sizable piece of land, secluded yet accessible, with natural features that could be adapted to create a comfortable and stimulating environment for Leo. After weeks of searching, he found the perfect spot: a sprawling, abandoned ranch a few miles outside Harmony Creek. The property, with its rolling hills, a natural spring, and remnants of old barns and outbuildings, offered the ideal setting for his sanctuary. The biggest hurdle was funding. John's savings were meager, and the cost of acquiring the land, building the enclosure, and providing for Leo's ongoing care was daunting. He decided to launch a fundraising campaign, appealing to the public's sense of compassion and their fascination with the Harmony Creek lion. He wrote heartfelt letters to newspapers and magazines, contacted local businesses for sponsorships, and even set up a website with Leo's story and photos. To his surprise, the response was overwhelming. Donations poured in from across the country, from animal lovers, conservationists, and even curious onlookers touched by Leo's plight. The local media, sensing a shift in public opinion, began to portray John as a visionary, a man dedicated to giving a second chance to a creature in need. With the funds secured, John set to work transforming the abandoned ranch into a haven for Leo. He enlisted the help of volunteers, many of whom had initially opposed his idea but were now captivated by his passion and dedication. They cleared the overgrown fields, repaired the dilapidated structures, and erected a sturdy, spacious enclosure designed to meet the highest safety standards. As the sanctuary took shape, John's vision extended beyond Leo's well-being. He envisioned a place where people could connect with nature, learn about wildlife conservation, and experience the awe-inspiring presence of a magnificent predator. He planned educational programs, guided tours, and even a small visitor center with exhibits and interactive displays. The transformation of Harmony Creek's perception was remarkable. The initial fear and skepticism gradually gave way to curiosity and even pride. The town, once known for its sleepy anonymity, was now gaining national attention as the home of the Harmony Creek Lion Sanctuary. The day finally arrived when Leo was transported from Dr. Evans' clinic to his new home. As the lion stepped out of the trailer and into his spacious enclosure, a collective gasp arose from the gathered crowd. Leo, his mane gleaming in the sunlight, surveyed his surroundings with a regal air, then let out a powerful roar that echoed through the hills. It was a roar of freedom, of contentment, of belonging. John, watching from a distance, felt a surge of emotion. He had faced opposition, overcome obstacles, and poured his heart and soul into this project. But seeing Leo thrive in his new environment, he knew it was all worth it. He had not only saved a lion, he had created a sanctuary, a symbol of hope and compassion, a testament to the enduring bond between humans and animals. Life at the Harmony Creek Lion Sanctuary settled into a comfortable routine. Leo, now fully recovered from his injury, ruled his domain with a quiet dignity. He spent his days basking in the sun, patrolling his territory, and occasionally indulging in playful bursts of energy, chasing butterflies or batting at the branches of the old oak tree that provided shade in his enclosure. John, now officially the sanctuary director, devoted himself to Leo's care and the management of the growing facility. He worked tirelessly, cleaning the enclosure, preparing meals, and monitoring Leo's health. He also oversaw the daily operations of the sanctuary, coordinating volunteers, conducting tours, and managing the finances. The sanctuary became a popular attraction, drawing visitors from far and wide. Families marveled at Leo's majestic presence, children squealed with delight at his playful antics, and even the most hardened skeptics were moved by his quiet strength. John, with his deep knowledge of lions and his genuine passion for conservation, became a sought-after speaker, educating visitors about the threats facing lions in the wild and the importance of protecting their habitats. But the sanctuary was more than just a tourist destination. It became a haven for other animals in need. John took in a rescued bobcat, a pair of orphaned coyotes, and a flock of injured hawks, providing them with a safe and nurturing environment. The sanctuary evolved into a symbol of hope, a testament to the resilience of nature and the power of human compassion. One day, a new volunteer arrived at the sanctuary. Sarah, a young woman with a bright smile and a passion for wildlife, had recently graduated with a degree in animal behavior. She was eager to gain experience working with large predators, and she was immediately drawn to Leo's story and John's dedication. Sarah quickly became an invaluable asset to the sanctuary. She assisted John with Leo's care, conducted research on his behavior, and developed educational programs for visitors. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and her presence brought a new energy to the sanctuary. John, who had grown accustomed to his solitary routine, found himself enjoying Sarah's company. They spent hours discussing animal welfare, debating conservation strategies, and sharing their love for the natural world. Sarah's youthful optimism and her fresh perspective challenged John's long-held beliefs, opening his mind to new possibilities. As the months passed, a deep bond formed between John and Sarah. They were united by their shared passion for the sanctuary and their admiration for Leo, who seemed to sense their connection and respond with an unusual gentleness. John, who had thought his heart was closed off to love after Mary's death, found himself drawn to Sarah's warmth and kindness. One evening, as they were closing up the sanctuary after a long day, John confessed his feelings. Sarah, her eyes sparkling with affection, admitted she felt the same way. Their relationship blossomed, bringing a new dimension of joy and fulfillment to John's life. The sanctuary continued to thrive, a testament to John's vision and the community's support. Leo, the once lost lion, had found a home, and John, the once solitary ranger, had found love and a renewed sense of purpose. The Harmony Creek Lion Sanctuary had become a beacon of hope, a place where humans and animals coexisted in harmony, a reminder that even in the most unexpected circumstances, compassion and kindness could prevail. Life at the sanctuary seemed idyllic, a haven of peace and purpose. But shadows from the past were about to cast a pall over their newfound harmony. One afternoon, a sleek black car pulled up to the sanctuary gates, and a woman stepped out. She was tall and elegant, with an air of authority that made John instinctively straighten his posture. "John Riley?" she inquired, her voice crisp and businesslike. "That's me," John replied, a sense of unease creeping in. "My name is Eleanor Vance," she introduced herself, extending a manicured hand. "I'm an attorney representing the estate of Mr. Robert Caldwell." The name sent a jolt through John. Robert Caldwell was a wealthy businessman, notorious for his trophy hunting exploits and his controversial wildlife collection. John had crossed paths with him years ago, during a heated debate about the ethics of keeping wild animals in captivity. The encounter had left a bitter taste in John's mouth. "What can I do for you, Ms. Vance?" John asked, his voice guarded. "Mr. Caldwell passed away recently," she explained, "and in his will, he bequeathed a significant portion of his estate, including a rather unusual asset, to you." John's confusion deepened. "I don't understand. I never met the man, except for that one time." "The asset in question," Ms. Vance continued, "is a lion, a male lion named Aslan." John's blood ran cold. Aslan. He remembered the name. It was the lion Caldwell had boasted about acquiring from a private breeder, a magnificent specimen destined for his private menagerie. I don't know what to say," John stammered. "I can't take another lion. The sanctuary is barely managing with Leo." "Mr. Caldwell's will is quite specific," Ms. Vance interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. "If you refuse to accept the lion, the entire bequest, including the funds designated for the sanctuary's upkeep, will be revoked. Aslan will be sent to auction, most likely ending up in the hands of another collector." John felt trapped. He couldn't bear the thought of another lion suffering the same fate as Leo, confined to a life of captivity. But how could he possibly accommodate another large predator, with all the associated costs and risks? He looked at Sarah, her face etched with concern. "What do we do, John?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. John knew he had a difficult decision to make. He had built this sanctuary as a haven for Leo, a place of peace and tranquility. Now, that peace was threatened by the arrival of another lion, a creature with an unknown past and potentially dangerous instincts. He thought of Leo, his majestic presence, his gentle nature. Could he risk introducing another male lion into the equation, disrupting the delicate balance they had achieved? But he also thought of Aslan, languishing in some gilded cage, a victim of human greed and vanity. Could he turn his back on a creature in need, condemning it to a life of isolation and misery? John's heart ached with the weight of responsibility. He had created a sanctuary, a symbol of hope. Now that sanctuary was being tested, its very foundation shaken by the shadows of the past. He had to find a way to navigate this challenge, to protect Leo, to save Aslan, and to preserve the sanctuary he had worked so hard to build. The arrival of Aslan threw the Harmony Creek Lion Sanctuary into turmoil. John, torn between his commitment to Leo and his compassion for the newcomer, found himself facing a daunting challenge. Aslan, unlike Leo, was a product of captivity, raised in an artificial environment, deprived of the natural instincts and social interactions that shaped a lion's behavior. He was wary of humans, his eyes holding a deep-seated mistrust. He paced restlessly in his temporary enclosure, his roars echoing through the sanctuary, a stark contrast to Leo's calm demeanor. John knew that introducing Aslan to Leo would be a delicate and potentially dangerous process. He consulted with lion experts, studying their advice on integrating captive-bred lions into a more natural setting. He meticulously planned the introduction, creating separate but adjoining enclosures, allowing the lions to acclimate to each other's scent and presence before any direct contact. The first encounter was tense. Leo, initially curious, turned defensive when Aslan displayed aggression, his roars a challenge to Leo's authority. John and Sarah watched anxiously, ready to intervene if necessary. But gradually, as the days turned into weeks, a cautious truce emerged. Leo, with his inherent wisdom and gentle nature, seemed to sense Aslan's insecurity and vulnerability. He established his dominance without resorting to violence, asserting his authority through subtle gestures and vocalizations. Aslan, in turn, gradually responded to Leo's leadership, his aggression giving way to a grudging respect. The day finally came when John decided to allow the two lions to share the main enclosure. The tension was palpable as the gates were opened, and the lions cautiously approached each other. There were moments of posturing, of growls and snarls, but no outright aggression. To John's relief, a fragile peace settled over the sanctuary. The presence of Aslan brought unexpected benefits. Leo, who had grown accustomed to a solitary existence, seemed revitalized by the companionship. He and Aslan would often be seen playing together, their mock fights and playful chases echoing through the hills. The sight of the two magnificent creatures interacting, their bond growing stronger with each passing day, filled John with a sense of wonder and accomplishment. The sanctuary, once a haven for a single lost lion, had evolved into a testament to the resilience and adaptability of these majestic creatures. It was a place where two lions, from vastly different backgrounds, had found common ground, a place where their roars blended in a harmonious chorus, a testament to the enduring power of nature and the enduring bond between humans and animals. The Harmony Creek Lion Sanctuary continued to thrive, attracting visitors and researchers from around the world. John and Sarah, their love for each other and their dedication to the sanctuary unwavering, led the way, their story an inspiration to all who believed in the power of compassion and the importance of conservation. And in the heart of the sanctuary, two lions, once strangers, now companions, roamed their domain, their roars a symphony of freedom and resilience, a reminder that even in a world filled with challenges, hope and harmony could prevail.